43 minutes. Mad season. Let's go hype. All right. Mad season. Okay. Mission failed. No, mission success, man. I would rather not piss anyone off. I think that's fantastic. All right, guys. Why the Shadowlands was bad. Now, I actually have a really weird view of the Shadowlands. I actually kind of liked Shadowlands. Now, hold on. Before you judge me, I had like a very small view of the game. I played PvP as a mage, and I played double mage with Mitch. I played RMP with Wreckful. I played a ton of games with Peekaboo. I had fun in my own little PvP bubble with my friends. So from my perspective, like, I didn't hate Shadowlands. Now, as an expansion, was it my favorite? No. I'm sure Mad Season's going to touch on a lot of those things in this video, and I'm curious on his takes. But, like, from my perspective, like, I remember slinging some G-Pies, you know? Like, I remember doing some 42-0s with Mitchy J. You know, I remember some good times, okay? But that's just a small sliver of the game, okay? Let's look at everything else. And I'm gonna go down here too. I'm gonna go here too.
The year is 2020, and the World of Warcraft has hit an all-time low in morale. Not only was it coming off of the back of what is today widely regarded as one of the worst expansions, if not the worst, but controversies seem to be an almost monthly ordeal for Blizzard at this point. It was clear the once beloved Blizzard of the past was no more. A reality that was further emphasized by the departure of well-known founding members. One by one, they seemed to be abandoning ship of what was once considered the greatest video game developer of all time. They would start their own personal projects, and as evidenced with the recent release of World of Warcraft Classic, there's a definite yearning for the good old days at this point, as the current version of the game had entered this new dark age, one that was shrouded in the shadow of their next expansion, the Shadowlands.
Shadowlands hype!
But despite the low morale and the gloom and doom, there did lay a glimmer of hope. Up until this point, when Blizzard did falter, it was quickly followed up by a redemption. Cataclysm was the first sign of trouble, but for Mists, as controversial as it was during its release, many today look back to quite fondly. This was of course followed by the ill-fated Warlords of Draenor, now considered to be a dud, but was quite quickly redeemed by its now favored follow-up, Legion. So, yeah. With the Battle for Azeroth failing to meet the expectations of the player base, many fell back to this pattern, and they thought that Shadowlands would be the one to bring it back to its former glory. So what was the Shadowlands?
That's always the expansion selling point. This is going to bring WoW back to its former glory. This is going to return WoW back to its previous glory. I've actually given up on that because, well, Blizzard said themselves that they aren't taking WoW back. They're bringing WoW forward, right? I wish I could find the clip. Holly said this, like verbatim. We're taking a new path. We're not going back where we came from. We're doing new stuff, right? Like, this is not a secret, right? This has been said, right? So when a new expansion comes out, I would never expect at this point to go back to WoW's former glory. No, that's not even the goal. The goal is to take it to something brand new from Blizzard themselves, right? And hey, maybe that's actually what they probably should do. If you want to go back to former glory, let's get Classic Plus. Let's get, Wrath Plus. Let's get something like that. If you want to go back to former World of Warcraft, we have those options. Now, if you want to take retail into a completely new sphere, maybe that's what they should be doing. But I just want to be clear here. I think the idea that a new expansion is going to take us back to former glory is an idea that, like, we probably shouldn't have in our minds anymore. And I'm saying this because I did for a long time. And now I realize that's not even like a realistic expectation for any of us, as said by Blizzard themselves, right?
Expansion. And why do many consider it today to be one of the worst moments in the game's history? But first, a word from our sponsor,
Okay.
Helix Sleep. So ever since they started selling the level boost, I've told you so by the way, I found it quite difficult to sleep. I mean, come on, have you heard my voice? Recently I've had the opportunity to try a Helix Sleep mattress, and it's been a life changer for me. This is by far the most comfortable mattress I've ever slept on.
Okay,
And
Helix Lux,
I'm quite
huh?
happy to be doing this sponsor. In particular, I used to struggle with snoring and just getting too hot while I sleep, and I immediately saw an improvement with both. I took their sleep quiz, which set me up with the perfect mattress.
Nice.
I'm a side sleeper and I love soft beds.
Thanks for the sub,
so
dude.
I was matched with the Sunset Lux, and I also got the Glaciotech's cooling cover, which is designed to keep you from overheating. And I've had the most restful nights I've ever had. I feel way more productive, I have way more energy, and I actually sleep fewer hours now because the hours...
Yo, guys, side sleeper, back sleeper, or stomach sleeper in the chat. What's going on? Side sleepers rise up. Let's go. Side sleepers rise up. Let's send it. Side. Oh, I knew I liked you guys. There we go. There we go.
that I do actually sleep are quality, which leaves more time in the day for me to complain about World of Warcraft. The delivery was seamless and easy. It comes rolled up in a box for easy setup, and they also offer free shipping across the US. So thank you to Helix Sleep for sponsoring this video. I highly recommend you check them out. At least start with a quiz to see if they have anything that might be a good fit for you. Right now you can use my link down below in the comments and description and take advantage of their extended Labor Day sale, which is currently offering 27% off site-wide.
Alright, back to the video.
The announcement, as expected, was made at BlizzCon 2019, and
Someone goes, I'm a head sleeper. It's difficult to get it in the correct position. It requires a headstand, but once you're there, it's amazing. Brother. Dude, what?
at this point, many of the players weren't looking forward to a new expansion as much as they were looking forward to getting out of the previous. After 2 years of the most intense lineup of daily and weekly FOMO-infused busy work the game had ever seen, the fatigue was real, and players never wanted to hear the word Azerite ever again. And it was at this convention is where players learned of the Shadowlands, coming off of the Battle for Azeroth and its renewed focus on the Alliance versus Horde war, and a 20-second cutscene of an old god being defeated. The world was left battered and broken. Sylvanas Windrunner, the Horde's war chief, drove much of the conflict, and by its end, she faced off against both factions, but instead of falling, she pulled a shocking move. She shattered
Thanks
the
for
Lich
the prime,
King's
buddy.
Helm of Domination, which teared open this veil between Azeroth and the Shadowlands, which was the realm of death itself. This was the act that bridged the two expansions together, and it revealed Sylvanas' betrayal and her alliance with the Jailer, who was this mysterious figure that was revealed to having manipulated the events leading up to this moment. The environment was essentially the afterlife, with each territory governed by covenants with their own agendas, and players found themselves whisked away from faction battles to this more metaphysical crisis where souls were at stake, and the Jailer's plan to reshape reality looming in the shadows. It set the stage for a story about tangling with death itself and interacting with fallen heroes and villains, exploring new zones, and uncovering Sylvanas' true motives. But Covenants simply weren't a part of the expansion story. They also served as a major feature, with 4 different main factions: the Kyrian of Bastion, the
Bro, I remember when Covenants were announced at BlizzCon, everyone, all the fans were instantly like, bro, this is a bad idea, because if you have to choose one is going to be the best. And if you choose the wrong one, now you're screwed and you have to change. And you're time gated to change. And like the whole expansion was like, that ended up being pretty true. And then towards the end of the expansion, they made it so you could swap easily. And it was like not a big deal anymore. But that was like towards the end of the expansion, you know?
Lords of Maldraxxus, the Night Fae of Ardenweald, and the Ventir of Revendreth. After completing the questing campaign, players could choose just one of these covenants to align to, which gave them access to unique abilities, cosmetic rewards, and a narrative campaign that wove them into...
Bro, I remember Mitch Jones, like, all the mages went Night Fae. Some mages went Venthyr and then swapped Night Fae. And then Mitch Jones, Kyrian. Mitch Jones played Kyrian, bro. He played Radiant Spark. He was the only one. Put up Radiant Spark. Your next 4 direct damage abilities that hit the target deal 25% increased damage up to 100%. So what he would do is do Radiant Spark and then like Arcane Missiles. So like he would get it to 4 stacks and then send the Barrage at the 100% increase and go for a 1-shot. Of course he does. Yeah. And then everyone else played Night Fae because it was like way more consistent. This was the one behind my camera, Shifting Power. You could just reset all of your cooldowns. Every second spent channeling increases your haste. Wait. That's okay. It also reset your cooldowns. I don't know why it's not. Maybe that was like an upgrade that you got for it or something. Anyway, everyone else played that, which was Farmer. And we got some subs from Call Frodo, Bodus, and HC Blazer. Thanks, guys.
Ability story of the expansion. Each covenant offered 2 signature abilities, one that was class specific and one shared between everyone, which advertised major variety in your gameplay. Additionally, there would be soulbinds, which were customizable talent trees tied to covenant NPCs, the goal to provide deep customization while at the same time connecting smoothly to the story as players worked to restore their covenant's purpose. Some players had immediate concerns, as the choice is a double-edged blade where by picking one meant excluding the rest, which left questions if players would have to choose between abilities and perks that are more suited for one area of the game, such as raiding, and were lacking in others, such as Mythic Plus or PvP. But for now, only time would tell exactly how this would be addressed. Perhaps the next most flashy feature was Torghast, the Tower of the Damned, inspired by the growing popularity of the roguelike genre, which leans on replayability for its longevity. Torghast was this ever-changing, procedurally generated tower where players ventured solo or in groups up to 5 to battle through floors and enemies, traps, and of course bosses. This tied directly to Shadowlands narrative as players braved the tower to rescue.
Okay, I know everyone hated Torghast, but I swear that first day or first week of Torghast, when no one knew what it was yet, getting to that top of the tower and doing the hard bosses, bro. I remember it's actually one of my first like larger streams on Twitch was getting, I don't even remember, getting to some impressive floor number and everyone was like, oh crap, can you do it or whatever. It's been a while clearly. And it was fun. It was fun like when I first did it. And then from there I was like, oh, I have to come back every single week to power up my character. And it's like, it's brutal. Very different. Very, very different when you have to do it like that.
Rescue souls
on every ult too, yeah.
Gear using a currency called Soul Ash, which was earned after successful runs, and was another thing that was time gated. Each run offered randomized layouts, enemy types, and what they called Anima powers, which were these temporary buffs that could supercharge abilities, such as turning the mage's fireball into this room-clearing nuke, or a warrior's charge into this multi-target whirlwind. If you ever played the game Hades, it's a very similar concept, and these powers were aimed to encourage experimentation to offer its variety. Speaking of which though, legendaries were back from the Legion expansion, in some cases literally holding the exact same powers, but between the new talents and the new Covenant abilities, it was clear that choice was a large focus of Blizzard for this expansion, and legendaries would add yet another layer. But unlike Legion's legendaries, however, which you may recall the main criticism for them was their random nature, Shadowlands were targetable and craftable by taking expensive gear made through trade skills to the Rune Carver, who is this jailed entity within Torghast. If you gave him this gear and Soul Ash, you could bind legendary affixes to them in order to customize your toolkit. The tower itself would be accessed through a new high-level zone for the expansion, the Maw, which was the jailer's nightmarish prison realm in the heart of the Shadowlands.
Dude, the Maw
was
brutal.
This wasteland of lava rivers and towering spires, and it served as the expansion's narrative hub. It's where the most heinous and evil souls went in the afterlife. the gameplay inside of the zone was deliberately harsh, primarily through the Eye of the Jailer mechanic, which was the special meter that increased with actions such as killing enemies or rare mobs, or simply spending time there. As the meter increased, the jailer would become more and more annoyed by your presence and placed obstacles and enemies in your way until eventually he just spawned these deadly assassins, which essentially barred further progress until a daily reset. The zone itself was much like previous high-level zones released in other expansions, and it held a variety of rare mobs and treasure chests to hunt. And for participating, you would get a currency called Stygia, which would be used to purchase gear and cosmetics and other useful perks. And quite harshly, it would also be dropped on death, sort of like the Souls series. Although not as flashy, the leveling squish in Revamp was an enormous change in the game's history, with the game relying primarily on vertical progression. The downside was that there's this constant creep in power, and over time it can get out of hand where players are dealing millions of damage. While they'd scaled back these numbers in the past, what was a first for Shadowlands was the level squish, where the developers took the maximum from the Battle for Azeroth, which was 120, and they dropped that to 50, with level 60 to serve as the new maximum by the end of Shadowlands campaign. And it wasn't just...
Does anyone else find it weird when there's multiple squishes? Because thinking back at the expansions, it was like, what was Cap back then? Oh, it was squished, and then we leveled up again, and then it was squished again, and then we leveled up again. Like, what I would have rather preferred, and this would have taken a lot of forethought, is one squish with an intelligent design moving forward of how is this going to work for the next 10 years, 5, 10, 15 years? How are we actually going to continue to scale this thing, right? So if they scaled us back down to 50, each expansion could give us 5 for a while, or maybe even, well, I was going to say like one massive level, but that would probably be pretty darn boring. But like Kata did 5, and that was probably fine. But like have this roadmap to where you don't just have to re-squish, because then it just feels terrible. Like you're leveling up, you're getting powerful, squished. You're leveling up, getting powerful, squished. It's like, what's going on, right? There's bigger fish to fry. Okay, way bigger fish to fry, but like it's still just something to mention.
For numbers, the entire leveling experience at this point had long been neglected. Surely nothing to do with the fact that you can now pay money to skip it. And they thought it was time for an update. They introduced a new system called Chromie Time, and also a new starter zone, the Exile's Reach. Instead of going through each expansion's story, which at this point had totaled 8, including the Cataclysm's Old World, new players could now start in the Exile's Reach, which was this modern 1-10 experience teaching core mechanics through this shipwrecked adventure, although the old original starting zones were still left as an option. From there, players could choose any expansion campaign via Chromie Time, which was this time travel mechanic that let them level from 10 to 50 in, say, Wrath's Northrend or Miss Pandaria, and scaling all the content to their level. So, again, another big form of choice and agency that has been a running theme of the expansion so far. And lastly, another system saw a major update, and that's Mythic Plus. Ever since its introduction in Legion, it had become a staple in endgame progression, but Blizzard thought that its reward structure could use a little work. Up until this point, players were rewarded with loot both at the end of the
Snoopy.
run and also from this weekly cache that scaled to the highest level keystone that they had completed for that week. They thought that this was a little too random and frustrating, so the Shadowlands saw the release of the Great Vault, where instead of a single random item, players would be offered a choice based on the difficulty of the Mythic Plus runs completed. So again, giving players agency and control over their characters and their progression. And of course, beyond all of that, there were the usual fixings that every expansion had, such as new dungeons and raids. But really, it didn't matter that much. The players were so fatigued by the legendary amount of FOMO from BFA that they were desperate to see anything other than Azerite. It could have been a sprinkle-covered turd, and it would have seemed like an oasis.
Okay, nice.
But still, the question remained, would it follow the pattern and redeem the franchise? Or was it simply a sprinkle-covered turd?
Insert midnight launch footage here. There is none because of COVID XD.
As is custom, Blizzard had no issue selling the expansion, as it once again broke records, selling a total of 3.7 million copies within the first 24 hours of release.
Bro, Blizzard has such a strong IP. Like, new WoW expansion, hype. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, it's just, like, dude, even me, like, you know, I haven't played a ton of retail, this and that, but like, bro, Midnight comes out, oh, you bet I'm gonna check it out. It's like, why not? Like, definitely gonna check it out, at least for a little bit. It's like, for sure.
Though some would attribute this to the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. The expansion released on November 23rd, 2020, during the midst of the panic and lockdowns, where people were hoarding toilet paper and were falling back to the old reliable. Lock yourself inside of your house and play World of Warcraft all day. Combining this with the recent release of Classic, it was truly one of the more nostalgic times during the franchise's history. But what was also nostalgic and actually gave people hope was something that had been abnormal for Blizzard at this point in time. The expansion was delayed. Initially slated for late October, it was delayed 1 month as due to the COVID delays.
I totally
developers
forgot about
thought that it wasn't up to their quality standards. And the reaction, for the most part, wasn't rage, rather enthusiasm. While that may seem surprising, it does make sense, as at this point, the old quality standards that once made the developer great had seemingly disappeared, with the only other expansion to see a delay being the Burning Crusade, which was pushed from December 2006 to January 2007. Outside of the game, with Warcraft 3 Reforged fresh in people's minds, a re-release that was globally panned and clearly released unfinished in order to retain pre-orders. This came as a sign of relief for the players. Many believed that
I think Blizzard would be surprised at how many people like don't care if it's like just being honest and straightforward and being like, look, this isn't ready, we need to take our time. Like, most gamers are like, cool, yeah, do it. You know, like, it's like, we want to play a good game. If it takes some time, like, we'll be here, you know. It's that's fine. Like, yeah. Now the investors, not so much. The pressure from the board and the investors saying like, we need the product out, not so much, right? So like that's where the pressure comes from. I think that the players, I think we're fine. It's like, it's gonna be delayed, so it's better. It's like, great, cool.
The previous expansion, BFA, was released prematurely, as most of its selling features received major identity-shifting reworks and patches midway through its life. So, while there certainly were some that were disappointed, as this meant another month trapped in a room with the Azerite-addicted Magni, the majority were excited and hopeful that the developers had regained some sort of respect for themselves and their players by refusing to release an unfinished game. And it was only after it was released in November is when players found out if it was indeed worth the wait. They leveled through the zones, got acquainted with the new covenants, hit the maximum level and allied with one. They invaded the Maw, climbed the Tower of Torghast, and explored the new dungeons during the usual honeymoon period of the new expansion launch, which are most always dominated by excitement and positivity until it eventually wears off and people start to see it through a more clear lens. And as history had showed, what they had to say wasn't exactly glowing, and similar to the Battle for Azeroth. The reason for that is that nearly every major advertised feature fell short of players' expectations. Starting with possibly the most major, the Covenants. The aesthetics, lore, and how they were integrated into the story were all quite well received, but the main criticism fell to the point that the different abilities they offered varied greatly in power, and players couldn't simply switch between them easily.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of
Their
the
initial
issue.
worries were realized, and this restrictive design, while it certainly had merit, sparked intense backlash.
Yeah.
Players felt locked into their Covenant choice, as each faction's class-specific...
Yeah, so this was the issue. Imagine being a Death Knight player after seeing Night Fae is no longer your go-to. It's now Bastion. It's like... There, you would pick based on the meta, and then there would be hot fixes that would change it to something else, and now you're locked in, and it's like, bruh, what, like, bruh, and like everyone wants to be, you know, the best they can be, so it's like, it was tough.
Abilities were optimal for specific content, whether it be raiding, Mythic Plus, or PvP, and switching between them was punishing and slow. It required a time-gated quest to leave and rejoin, with progress like Renown or Soulbind unlocks reset, making them feel trapped as the forums were quickly filled with posts expressing regret of feeling like their characters were nerfed for simply picking, quote, the wrong covenant, or that choosing one for lore reasons meant sacrificing substantial character power. There is validity in restrictions, as it creates tough choices that feel meaningful, and had it been a different game, it may have even been received well. The issue is that this rigidity clashed with the player base that they had shaped by the time that Shadowlands was released. Ever since its launch, World of Warcraft was designed to be extremely accessible, whether that be less punishment for dying, refundable talent points, and no permanent unrefundable stat points to be allocated. You had instance raids, PvP that was completely optional.
Like, okay, so if they did this before the internet at large, that is, they did this in 2004 with no Twitch streamers, no YouTube videos, not a ton of guides online, just forum posts here and there, it probably would have worked kind of fine, right? Because people wouldn't have had the damage meters, the parses, the Warcraft logs to even know how bad they were or how good they were. It was just like you kind of pick something and it looked cool. And then you would ask someone, hey, which one are you? And it's like, oh, bro, I'm the skeleton mage. It's like, oh, dude, I have the Night Fae fairies or whatever. It's like sick. And like, it probably would have been fine. But where the internet was at 2020, it's like, no, everyone wants to min-max. Everyone wants to be the best, even if it's 1% more DPS or 5% more DPS. It's kind of a big deal. So like, it wasn't received well, clearly, right?
And so much more. And as you would know if you'd watched previous episodes of this series, this never stopped, whether it be XP nerfs, dungeon finder, raid finder, mob tag sharing, the removal of group quests, talent switchable on the fly anywhere in the world, purchasable level boosts in gold, heirlooms, alt-friendly catch-ups, collection.
Okay, hold on. There's a couple things in the chat. Natson with the Twitch Prime, thank you very much. The first thing is changing covenants was easy. This is kind of misleading. Changing covenants was not easy until the end of the expansion where they made changing covenants easy. I think he's going to mention that, but he's not there in the video yet. I would assume he'll mention that. The next thing is, I mean, you could still go on Arena Junkies or look something up and check the ladders. Kinda. But it was still a lot less like accessible, well-known. Like the internet didn't scale yet. So yeah, you could look someone up, but you don't even know who the best players are. Like these things are changing all the time. You're like looking things up. There's no guides. You don't know why someone's playing a spec. You don't know if they logged out in their PvE spec. You don't know what comps they're playing all the time, if people are joining and leaving rosters. Like there's just so much information left out. And then yeah, you go on Arena Junkies, but Arena Junkies didn't exist until what, 2007 or something? So like it didn't even exist for a while. So like not really. At scale is the key word there, right? Like these things took a while to get good, right? Back in the beginning, it was pretty darn like you kind of just logged in and played for most of us. And then the third thing I wanted to address in the chat is people want to be meta sounds like a player problem. That's kind of true. But I think at the end of the day, it's the age we live in. It's 2025. People want to be meta because globalization, the internet exists. So it's like, you're not going to want to like intentionally just be bad. So it's a player problem, but it's also where we are as players. It's where the internet is today. So if you're a game dev, you have to keep it in mind, even though it's a player problem. I guess it's a human problem, but that's just how we think now. So like, yes, but I think that still lies on the developer to understand that, right? And they fixed that towards the end of Shadowlands. Crazy, thanks for the tier 1 sub, man.
Tabs. Over the course of 16 years, the game had constantly catered to those who wanted convenience and accessibility, and at this point, it was a major part of its identity, even more so when they re-released Classic, and those who preferred this comparatively less accessible nature and fewer quality of life features transitioned over. It's the same issue they had when they weren't going to release Flying in Draenor. While it certainly had its benefits, such as making the world feel larger, that itself is an entirely valid vision, but the issue was that they were pitching it to an audience that, at that point, didn't feel like it was worth the annoyance. So
Yeah.
when you try to release a feature that's defined by meaningful choice, by way of putting
That's
punishing
tough. That's
hurdles
tough.
in between the player and changing and reducing accessibility, you're pitching it to this very same unreceptive player base, and you're going against the very identity that your entire game is now shaped around. Social media were filled with rants calling it a forced RPG element, with many feeling that Blizzard had painted themselves into a corner with years of bending to demands for this unlimited accessibility, making the Covenant's restrictions feel jarring and alienating players who wanted to swap builds for Mythic Plus or PvP. Additionally, this problem was made worse with the fact that the abilities were simply unbalanced. Some vastly outperformed others in specific content, which just fueled frustrations further. And balancing was difficult because increasing or decreasing the effectiveness of abilities had a chance to create a new meta, which would then make players feel more inclined to switch, to adapt in this restrictive system. Many felt that it fell victim to the same problem that they had been facing with the talent tree since the release of the game. There's really no meaningful choice because there will always be a best, and players will always want to play the best. So this choice is really an illusion.
Yeah.
Famously, in an interview
tough.
with the game director, Ian Hazekostas, he had remarked that although Blizzard had heard all of the feedback and could, quote, pull the ripcord if they saw the need to relax the punishments for switching, they were sticking with their original vision, as they had felt that in the long run, it would create a more meaningful experience for the players. This comment fueled a movement of sorts
Pull the ripcord,
called
Blizzard.
Pull the Ripcord, where many of its players very vocally campaigned on social media under the threat of unsubscribing. Eventually, they would be successful in their pleas,
Yep,
as
and there
in
it
patch
is.
9.1, they had eased switching penalties, but much like the case with BFA, the early damage had been done.
Right.
Another criticism tied to Covenants was the Anima grind. This would be a slow burn, starting 2 expansions prior in Legion with artifact power, of this concept of this grindable resource that serves as another form of character progression from the beginning to the end of an expansion. In Legion, partly because it was new at the time and partly because the system associated with it, artifacts, were received quite well, the artifact power grind overall wasn't a major point of headache with the fans, but by the time the Battle for Azeroth rolled around, some fatigue had started to set in, and many were discouraged to learn that Azerite was essentially this reskinned artifact power. This
True.
time, instead of artifacts, it empowered the Azerite amulet, which
Yep.
served as the way of leveling up Azerite armor. So, with how poorly this was received throughout BFA, you can only imagine the fatigue that set in when players had learned that it would be reskinned once again as Anima. Thematically, it was the lifeblood of the afterlife, a resource representing the essence of souls, and functionally, it was the same routine. You got it from a variety of activities such as world quests, to name one, and you used it to progress your character. This time, it was the currency to upgrade your covenant and to boost character power. However, with it being the 3rd version, players were just over it at this point. The drops were often small, and Sanctum upgrades required massive amounts, leading to endless farming that felt repetitive and slow, with players similar to the Battle for Azeroth feeling pressured to farm daily. The drop rates were increased in patch 9.1, which partially alleviated the
So, in a later interview, and Mad Season might mention this, Blizzard kind of, I think this was with Preach. I think it was an interview with Preach on like a year or two ago. But Blizzard basically was reflecting on this, and they were like, when we initially launched BFA, people loved the grind, people really enjoyed it, so we started building Shadowlands with the same grind in mind. But it wasn't until later BFA that people were like, no, this sucks. But Shadowlands was already kind of like ready to ship, and they've already built the whole thing under the pretense that people actually enjoyed this artifact power grind. So that's kind of what I think it was Ian said to Preach in like a video that I remember watching like a year or two ago. And it was like, oh crap, we thought you guys liked this. And then for the next expansion, they ended up kind of taking it out, or the next expansion after that maybe. But yeah, so it's a lot of this stuff is just done so many years in advance, and then when we realize that we actually don't like something, it's already built. It's tough.
issue, but it remained to be a nagging point for the entirety of the expansion. The Maw saw similar frustrations. One of the main ones being was the fact that you simply couldn't mount in them. No, not flying mounts. You couldn't mount, period.
Yeah.
So how do you think the same player base that threatened to quit over no flying mounts in Draenor reacted to this? Oh, they were super happy and they thought it was the best feature of the entire expansion. No, they hated it. And again, from a game development perspective,
PTSD
you
for
can
sure.
see the idea. Combining this with the Eye of the Jailer mechanic, the whole idea of the zone was to make it oppressive and imposing, something that vanilla World of Warcraft is reminisced fondly about. But again, the people who enjoyed that were already playing Classic, and the people left playing Shadowlands simply did not feel like it was worth the...
So this, like, the more I think about it, like, this is a good discussion. The more I think about the direction Blizzard should take retail is probably not in the direction I want retail to go in. Like, I've been enjoying a lot of Classic over these last recent years, but taking retail into the direction of Classic is probably a mistake, because the people that like Classic, like Mad Season just said, are playing Classic, and the people that like Classic are looking forward to Classic Plus. Don't try to make retail into something it's not. Like, continue moving it forward, and that's what they're doing, and it's actually probably pretty intelligent. It's like, if you want retail, we have this thing for you, and if you want Classic, we have that thing for you. But trying to do this thing where it's like, oh, let's get all the Classic players into retail with like designs like this, it's like that's probably just not gonna work, right? Tryon, thanks for the 2-1 sub, man.
Inconvenience. Therefore, to them, it just made the entire zone feel like an arduous chore, which wasn't helped with the fact that you dropped your Stygia when you died. Players vented their frustrations over these restrictions, arguing that the grounded and timed nature of it stifled exploration in a zone meant to be a dynamic endgame hub, and it turns daily visits into a...
The mod truly succeeds as a representation of hell because it's not fun at all. Bro. 2,000 upvotes.
repetitive slog. Community posts frequently called the zone anti-fun. The grind for Stygia felt mandatory, yet unrewarding, and the zone's repetitive events, such as killing rares or freeing souls or click on the shiny object, lacked variety and led to burnout, and on both a micro and a macro level. On the macro, ever since the Mists of Pandaria with the Timeless Isle, Blizzard had sort of fallen into this flowchart of releasing a high-level zone with rares and treasure. After the Timeless Isle, you had Tan and Jungle and Draenor, Argus and Legion, as well as Nazjatar and Mechagon in the Battle for Azeroth. And while these zones were exciting and interesting at first, at this point, along with the Anima, it was just another thing that had overstayed its welcome, and as a result, it felt quite uninspired and formulaic. As for the Tower of Torghast, this too was another feature that initially excited players, but as the honeymoon period faded, it would suffer the same problems that any feature with a weekly timer would fall victim to. Eventually, players became fatigued. While it would be untrue to say that Shadowlands had as intense of a churn of daily and weekly timers as BFA, it is true to say that the player base still had some lasting fatigue from the absolute over-the-top insanity from BFA. The core issue was repetition. You had to run Torghast repeatedly to farm enough currency for legendaries, but the randomized floors often felt samey, with similar enemies and traps despite the shifting layouts, as players soon likened to calling it Choreghast. The legendaries were quite powerful, so the grind was mandatory for...
I mean, bro, like I said, I enjoyed my first few runs. It's almost like if Torghast wasn't mandatory to level your legendaries, and on top of that, doing Torghast on an exceptionally hard difficulty, like a question mark delve or whatever, would give you some type of achievement and title or cosmetics, then it would have actually been really fun, right? Like a mage tower. Like, if you do this on mythic difficulty or question mark difficulty or whatever it is, then you get some rare cosmetic. I think people would have had a way different reaction to the same exact content, right? It would have been like, oh, wow, I made it to the top of this tower and I got something cool. Sweet. Then I don't need to do it again. Like, imagine Mage Tower. Imagine Mage Tower, which people love, but instead of giving you a cool cosmetics, you had to do Mage Tower every week to gain player power. That would have sucked. If you had to do Mage Tower every single week to gain player power, I think people would have hated it, right? So, yeah.
For endgame content, and this discontent was fueled further by unbalanced mechanics, especially at first, as some classes certainly got the short end of the stick with the new Anima powers. While some could essentially autopilot, others had to claw and peck their way to the top. So, while some felt that it had potential, for others it was simple. It's simply impossible, no matter how well a feature is designed, for it to remain interesting and fun if it's required every week for the better part of 2 years. So those who watched the episode on BFA may be getting some deja vu at this point. The issue with Shadowlands is that nearly every major feature of the expansion was disappointing. Not everything though. The Great Vault was very well received, and it helped quite a bit with that frustration of completing challenging content only to feel like you're at the complete mercy of RNG. And to that end, it's a system that's still integrated into the game today. A running theme you've noticed with these videos is that, regardless of the expansion, even the not so great ones, the criticisms for its rating are quite rare. But unfortunately, this too is where Shadowlands would see some pretty heavy criticism, particularly with the second raid tier, the Sanctum of Domination. Many believed that the raid had an overabundance of mechanics that required players to stop damage, which proved to be mildly frustrating.
Dude, fucking spit on this horrible game, man.
Dude.
Every boss, stop damage, guys. Stop damage, guys. Guys, too much damage, guys. Stop damage, please, guys. Stop damage. Like, dude, I don't want to stop damage. I don't want to stop damage. Horrible game design.
The raid also held the
Bro, I never saw that. That's good. Holy crap. It's actually true though, man. Pressing escape, no thank you, bro.
almost unanimously hated Shards of Domination system.
That's
released
great.
in patch 9.1, and drawing from the lore of the Shattered Helm of Domination, these unique and upgradable gems represented its fragments and were socketed into special domination sockets on raid gear and dropping from bosses. There were 3 types of shards. You had Blood, which was red and focused on health and damage, Frost, which was blue, emphasizing shields and crits, and Unholy, which was green, which was about debuffs and haste, with 9 total variants, each offering passive effects that boosted power in all of Shadowlands content. The issue is that it ended up being a very RNG-based system, taking some players many times the amount of boss kills to get the equivalent of someone else. This was made worse with the fact that the power spikes were quite large, so you had this very impactful system that you had very little control over, similar once again to the legendaries. Another issue is that it forced the recrafting of legendaries if a domination piece overlapped slots, which meant more Tower of Torghast, which people were already unhappy with, especially with other elements of the game being very tedious and grindy. And similar to the issue with the Covenants, the shards themselves were very unbalanced, and it seemed like those who actually enjoyed it were few and far between, as even the most devout fans were starting to become quite frustrated with the number of failed systems that the expansion held.
True.
Another issue was the story,
True.
often delivered through raiding, and for many, this ended up being the most disappointing thing with the expansion, and there are a few primary reasons for that. The first, and anyone will tell you this, being the main villain, the jailer. Second was Sylvanas fatigue, and third was that its bad story wasn't even contained in its own expansion, as it retconned over 2 decades of lore that players actually enjoyed. As for the actual zones and art design, as usual, they were as stunning as ever. If there's anything that Blizzard is consistently great at, it's the art direction, and the zones were visually a sight to behold in their own unique way. They were immersive, interesting, imposing, and they immediately drew you into this new world, and they made you excited to explore all of the nooks and crannies.
That's fair, yeah.
But the issue wasn't with the world, it was just with the story, and where to even begin with this. I guess we'll just start with Sylvanas Windrunner, who is the antagonist of the Battle for Azeroth. Some will disagree with the word antagonist there.
I was going to say,
Blizzard
Sylvanas did nothing wrong, huh?
attempted to pitch her as morally gray, but I'm pretty sure you lose that label when you know,
True.
burn down an entire city to the ground.
Bro, that BFA trailer, though, I say this all the time, but it's my favorite, man. Oh, it's sick. When the For the Horde comes out, it's like, all right.
I don't know, maybe that's just me. Is drowning a basket full of kittens morally gray too? But if you saw the BFA video, you would know that she was front and center, the main attraction for the Battle for Azeroth, lying at the heart of the conflict between the Alliance and the Horde. And she would simply do things that didn't really make any sense and conflicted with her character, with hints that there's some grand, ulterior, larger plan that the players would eventually be made aware of. And this continued throughout the entirety of the expansion with no answers. So, by the time that BFA had concluded, there was already this fatigue. She had inexplicably become the most powerful entity in the universe, mowing down everything and everyone in her path, with little to no explanation as to why or how. It felt like the developers had just watched too much Game of Thrones, which wouldn't be a problem if they weren't relying on Season 8 on repeat.
I'm not going to stop the wheel.
Spoilers.
I'm going to break the wheel.
Spoilers.
So, what are we doing?
Breaking the cycle.
Okay, there we go.
But the issue is that this format doesn't translate well into a video game expansion. In a TV show where new episodes are released weekly until a season is concluded, information is delivered in a consistent and orderly fashion with a general beginning and end, with some exceptions of storylines that continue into the next season as a hook. But for an MMO,
Bro,
you get
Game
a
of
little
Thrones
bit
was
of
so
story
good until the
in-game,
end. Oh my gosh.
Then 4 months pass, and then you get a little more, and then a book is released that you have to purchase separately. Then 4 months pass, and then the next patch continues the story of the book only. Then a developer puts self-inserts of himself while role-playing on Twitter. So the end result is a fan base that has absolutely zero idea of what is going on, and after being strung along for about 2 years in BFA, they had simply stopped caring. So to begin here, before the expansion even launched, to learn that Sylvanas is yet again another major primary character didn't please people too much. But she wasn't alone. She was of course joined by the Jailer, which is the other half of the issue with the story of Shadowlands. His real name being Zoval. He was introduced as this mastermind behind this cosmic crisis, a shadowy titan-like figure imprisoned in the Maw, who sought to rewrite reality using the Shattered Helm's power. What Blizzard had hoped was that the players would see him as this architect of major Warcraft events, but throughout all of the expansion, his motives were vague, and his character was dull and flat. He was a generic evil overlord with little personality, which would be bad enough by itself, but the issue was that all lore previous to his sudden appearance was retconned. It was revealed that he influenced the creation of the Lich King and ordered the creation of the Helm of Domination and Frostmourne, meaning that the Lich King's reign from Ner'zhul to Arthas was orchestrated by the Jailer to funnel souls into the Maw, and it completely reframed the entire Wrath of the Lich King story that many point to as the prime of the game. So, decades of lore, starting in Warcraft 3, was now a mere cog in Zoval's cosmic plan. People were furious.
I remember
and
this, yeah.
They called it exactly what it was. A cheap retcon that completely disrespected Arthas's agency and the emotional weight of the entire story of the Frozen
Yeah,
Throne
it's not good
and
to
the Wrath
undercut
of the Lich
that.
King.
Absolutely not.
But they didn't stop there. Next was the Burning Legion, which was another major cornerstone of Warcraft lore. Similarly, they were tied to the Jailer, revealing that it was his agents manipulating Sargeras. Yeah, it was Chris Chan levels of fanfiction. And again, the issue is that if the story of Shadowlands was contained in its own terrible expansion, it would be fine. But
I didn't even
it wasn't,
understand this back
and
then. Yeah,
it
that's
actually
crazy.
retroactively cheapened actual beloved expansions and lore
Right.
without any sort of build-up. It was like a finger snap out of nowhere. This all-knowing mastermind with vague motives and no personality had been behind some of the most iconic lore and moments within Warcraft's history.
I mean, we had this similar discussion earlier this morning. When you can go to Legion Remix and get the AOTC mounts, it kind of cheapens the whole idea of an AOTC mount, because now you can get it from remixes instead. And it's like, oh, okay. So that's what this means now. So what was the whole point? It kind of like cheapens the idea of this whole thing that you actually like, you kind of liked in the first place. It's kind of a slap in the face, right?
There was a slow drip of lore through the following patches that meant to flesh out his motives, along with disjointed book releases, but for many, combined with the fact that it sucked and their slow delivery, it did little to help. No one was happy to wait months for a snippet of information about why this bald idiot was now on a hierarchy above the Lich King and Sargeras. His final defeat felt anticlimactic, and he had a monologue that everybody mocked. The Helm of Domination turned into the crown from Burger King, and it was a laughable end to a laughable expansion, and lore channels had to have welfare checks.
How many books are you gonna fucking get out of me? How much money am I gonna pay before I can finally explain the lore to the people that want to know about it to the degree that it's actually comprehensible?
I will never serve.
In particular, Novel,
Oh my-
the king of Warcraft lore, and also one of the nicest and most patient people on YouTube, had to take a break and go play Final Fantasy XIV during the Shadow
When the lore is so bad, it makes the lore guy quit. Dude.
Lands expansion. Another issue with the raids was the rate at which they were delivered. Certainly due to the impact of COVID, Shadowlands suffered from substantial droughts in between major updates, so much so that there is even evidence that, similar to Draenor, an entire raid tier had to be cut from the expansion. There was evidence of an entrance in the Ardenweald zone, as well as scrapped data mined weapons labeled as Ardenweald Raid. Similar to the Warlords of Draenor, there ended up being just 3 major raids in the expansion, and the reason for this is up to debate. Some say it's because of COVID's negative impact on production, others believe it to be the overall poor reception of Shadowlands, and the rest believe the reason is because of what was about to be the biggest scandal in the developer's long
that
history.
was this time.
At this point, Blizzard
forgot
wasn't a
about
stranger
this.
to scandals, but during Shadowlands, it was revealed that the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing had filed a lawsuit for alleged consistent
Yeah.
sexual misconduct and discrimination.
Oh, dude,
in
I
their
forgot about this
workplace.
too.
The lawsuit alleged that employees of Blizzard would get drunk at work and perform what were called cube crawls, where they would stroll around the office
Yeah,
making
nah.
inappropriate sexual remarks and advances towards female employees. The news of this lawsuit opened the floodgates, and employees both
Yeah.
past and current came out with personal accounts ranging from sexual discrimination to harassment to breast milk mysteriously disappearing from break from refrigerators. This would
Yeah.
quickly become a historic scandal, which forced Bobby Kotick, who is not a lizard, to make a statement addressing it.
Dude.
I want to talk with you today about our future and reiterate my conviction to create the most welcoming and inclusive workplace. Over the last few months, so many of you
Dude,
have
a
generously
blink
and
counter.
candidly shared your experiences and your insights about the type of company you want us to be. We've taken meaningful
Wait, how is he not blinking? What am I missing? Like, dude, what?
actions to improve our company and our culture, but there's more to do. To become the model workplace we all aspire to be, more change is required. But I am so confident we will get there. There will
28 seconds? Wait, how have I not seen this before, bro? 28 seconds? Are you kidding me? What?
of course be continued media attention about us and our industry over the next few months. In fact, there's an article today that paints an inaccurate and misleading view of our company, of me personally, and my leadership.
Wait, how do you not blink for 43 seconds? How is that even possible? What the? What?
I want to say two important things about this. First, we are incredibly
It's a party when he plays.
I want to say two important things about this. First,
Oh wait, there was only a half blink. It was only a half blink.
I want to say two important things about this.
You see that? It like, he never actually fully blinked. Like this eye went like pretty much all the way down, but this eye was only a half blink.
First, we are incredibly fortunate to have the most talented people in our industry, all so committed to constant improvement, and I share this commitment. The second thing I want to say
Dude, the
is
music
that
in the
anyone who
background
doubts
too. Oh my gosh.
conviction to be the most welcoming and inclusive workplace doesn't really appreciate how important this is to me.
Dude.
Creativity and inspiration thrives best in a safe, welcoming,
Bro, this is
respectful
creepy. I'm getting
environment.
someone hold me.
There is no substitute for that. And staying true to our values without exceptions is the best way to
Bro, 2 40-second stretches without blinking. I mean, that is crazy. Dude, you gotta blink. Like, how often do you guys blink? Every like 10, right? Like max.
retain our talent and to attract the new talent we need to achieve our great potential. As I've made clear, we're moving forward with a new zero-tolerance policy for inappropriate behavior. And zero means zero. Any reprehensible conduct is simply unacceptable.
60 seconds, bro.
We have a chance to further enhance
my
our culture
gosh.
and be the example other companies will follow. And we are so incredibly fortunate. Connecting and engaging the world through joy and fun is a powerful mission. Accomplishing this in a welcoming, inclusive workplace ensures we will achieve our mission with excellence. Over the last few years, our industry has had
Dude,
an
there's
uncomfortable
no
spotlight
way.
that's been illuminated.
Bro, try to keep your eyes open for 90 seconds. They would be watering. Wouldn't they be watering? There's no way. This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. Because he's reading? Wait, guys, even if you're reading, can you be like 90 seconds without a blink?
Opportunities for us to change. And we must all, including me, embrace this need for change so we can bring
He's
our
locked
very
in.
best selves
I guess so,
to
man.
the very best place to work. Thank you,
Whoa, what was that?
very best selves, to the very best place to work.
Dude!
Thank you.
Oh
for
my
your commitment
gosh!
to cultural
Matt
respect,
Season, you're freaking me
your
out, man!
appreciation for the unique
Goodness
talents we each
gracious!
possess, and for maintaining the very best environment for all of us to work. For that, I am truly grateful.
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna see how long I cannot blink for. Alright. I don't actually know what's impressive, but 2 minutes seems really impressive. But I don't actually know. Okay, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Opening my eyes now. Bro, okay, I only made it 7, but that's gotta be cap. Hold on, I can do better than that. That's gotta be troll. Hold on. That's gotta be troll. That's gotta be troll. They started watering. Is it because my eyes were too wide open? All right, I'm gonna try it again. Except I'm gonna keep my eyes like kind of half closed. So my eyes are starting to burn at 7 seconds. I made it 11. Dude, hold on. That's bad. There's no way. Like I said before, I got 8 seconds tops. Take it or leave it. Bro, hold on. Guys, can anyone beat like 15 seconds here? Hold on. All right. Third time's the charm. I think I blinked right when it started, which is good. Oh, okay. I made it like 16. Don't open them wide. Am I opening them wide? I don't feel like I am. All right, I'm gonna. You guys want to see the timer though? All right, hold on. I'll try one more. I'll try one more time. I'm gonna see if I can go for 20. It hurts. No, I can't. Okay, that's not a good one. 7. Dude, sometimes it hurts more than others. Try reading something. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm gonna read this. Okay, I'm gonna keep my eyes closed. A simple, fast online stopwatch and online countdown timer always available when you need it. Stopwatch, online countdown, wait. Stopwatch, online stopwatch, easy to use. Online stopwatch, V-clock. The online stopwatch counts the time to the milliseconds that pass after you click the start button and allows you to add laps. Did I blink there? Maybe I didn't. Oh yeah, I think I did. Crap. I don't know if I blinked there. I think I like kind of blinked. You blinked at 4? I did? Crap. Okay, so hold up. How did he not blink for 2 minutes though? How did he not blink for 2 minutes? That doesn't make any sense. How does that happen? Alien? Guys, I'm being serious. Stop trolling. I'm being serious. How did he do that? Better question is, how can you not last 12 seconds? Dude, it's hard to last more than 12 seconds. It starts to burn.
The lawsuit would be settled in 2023, but it would rock the Blizzard community and permanently damage their reputation. Employees would begin protesting at Blizzard headquarters, and during this, a developer came out on Twitter and remarked that almost no work was being done while all of this was going on, which wasn't received too well, as updates were already releasing at a sluggish pace. The forums were quickly filled by players demanding refunds in subscriptions, as they were now paying for a game that wasn't being developed, and in response, developers would publicly scold the players and branding them as immoral for lashing out, and to get their priorities straight. To show how much they respected women, they started changing pictures of them into fruit and censoring fart jokes. All in all, it was one of the biggest clusterfucks in gaming history.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It was one of the catalysts that transformed Blizzard into this punching bag that it is today. Leading up to Shadowlands, people were already pessimistic and they lamented that they had fallen from grace, so this widely publicized scandal only reaffirmed their beliefs, as fans were stunned watching how over the course of nearly 2 decades, the developer had transformed from the most beloved to everything they once stood against. Most, if not all, of the big names had jumped ship at this point, pursuing personal interests, with co-founder Mike Morhaime launching a new development team, Dreamhaven, which mission statement not so subtly hinted at the issues that had been plaguing Blizzard for years. So both inside and outside of the game, Shadowlands was perhaps the darkest period in not only World of Warcraft's history, but Blizzard's history as a whole, and even the most hardcore dedicated fans of the series who would defend anything and everything with it will agree with that. You had developers who were openly arguing with fans on Twitter for not liking features, morally shaming them for their own inability to not show up drunk to work, and most every major feature of the expansion falling flat on its face. Years later now, the developers have since then apologized for how badly it turned out, for the features themselves failing, as well as retconning decades of lore with a Thanos clone, and for the general clusterfuck that was the Shadowlands expansion. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, as they had most certainly reached the bottom,
Dragonfly
and from
hard.
here, the only direction to go was up. I'll see you in the next episode, where we'll take flight
Dragonfly,
with Dragonfly.
hard. Let's go, Mad Season. There we go. Why Shadowlands was bad. Well, okay, so I forgot about all the cube crawl breast milk stuff completely. I forgot that was during Shadowlands, so I didn't mention that at the start of the video. But I started the video off saying I actually kind of like Shadowlands because I had good memories with my friends playing Double Mage with Mitch, RMP with Rekful. I played with Peekaboo. Like like I had fun, but I was in my own little PvP bubble with my friends, and it was a good time. But yeah, the Covenant system was bad till the end when you could swap. Like that sucked. I actually kind of got lucky and I chose Night Fae pretty early on, and it just was best the whole expansion. So I kind of got lucky where I was just Night Fae the whole time, so kind of worked out for me. But in general, still a bad system. Torghast, we already talked about that, right? Like if you want to do something like Torghast, make it incentivize it through cosmetics, not guaranteed player power that you need to do every single week, right? Even if Mage Tower, which people loved, was mandatory every single week for player power, like Anima or artifact power, it would get boring and annoying after like week 3, right? It's like you want to do something once because it's this exciting challenge to unlock a cosmetic, or more than once, but you don't want to be forced to do it weekly for player power, right? Okay. And then the lore stuff. The lore stuff, I wasn't in at all back then. Like I'm gonna be honest, guys. Like I haven't followed the lore much at all in WoW. The last couple years, maybe a bit more, but like for most of my time playing WoW, I'm just like I don't know what's going on anyway. So I didn't know it was so bad during it, but after this breakdown, I'm like, oh, that's pretty bad. So yeah, for those 3 reasons, like yeah, can understand why people hate it. I don't have like that massive sour taste in my mouth because, like I said, I had a fun time doing the things that I liked doing. But if I zoom out a bit, I understand it. I understand it. It makes sense. There we go.